The deep and profound challenges we have as a society, as a world, in fact, with regards to limited resources, climate change is not going to go away. If anything, it's going to get worse. So everything we do now is about ameliorating how bad that is. These goals, these ambitions, like the SDGs, which are hugely important in raising public awareness and galvanizing action, but if you don't get companies embracing those goals, then you're not going to achieve them. And that's why it's really, really important for investors, the owners of those businesses, to make sure that the companies are embracing those goals. We all individually have to act to achieve those goals.
So Sarasin manages clients' assets with one singular focus, which is to deliver long-term returns. And we do this primarily through looking at the world, looking at the trends in the world, and investing in companies and in assets that we believe will deliver these returns for our clients. And when you think about the long term, ultimately these returns have to be sustainable. So you cannot be investing for the future if the future is not sustainable. Right now, there's a phenomenal amount of noise coming about on a day-to-day basis. It comes from politics, it comes from algorithmic trading, it comes from passive ownership of financial markets. And we need to step aside, and what we try to do is really focus our energies and efforts on engaging with companies that we invest in, and to ensure that they're not really distracted by all of this, and they focus their efforts on delivering long-term sustainable profits. I think people are distracted very much by the here and now, and you can't see the wood for the trees. You know, when you think about the long term, it's trying to project a future, and it's actually sometimes it's very difficult to imagine. We always need to come back to the simple question, what are the most important things for the long term? You know, for society, for our companies, and for our investors.
The way we choose to focus on investing is to be long-term, it's to look at themes, it's to be thematic. So we look for the long-range mega trends that are currently reshaping society and reshaping industry, and we try to build investment portfolios around those trends. Digitalization, automation, aging, the emerging consumer, and climate change are the big five. I look after digitalization. Digitalization is really about this idea of more connected devices, so more people, cars, cities, devices are connected together than have ever been in human history. The Sustainable Development Goals are important and they're powerful in their own right. But as I mentioned earlier, they're also powerful to the extent that they can create more inclusive growth and be better for society as a whole, create more stability, and it's good for the economy, it's good for everybody. And the way we try and weave this into the process is through stewardship.
So stewardship at Sarasin is all about having an ownership mindset. And of course that complements our long-term perspective, because it's all about, if you're long-term, of course you need to act like an owner of these businesses. And that then means, of course, you need to think about the longer-term sustainability of earning flows, which leads us to taking into account things like how companies are behaving with local communities, with their staff, with their customers, how they're impacting on the environment. All these kind of things matter hugely to whether the company will be successful over the long term. When we invest on behalf of our clients, we look at these environmental, social governance considerations as part of our process. It's absolutely core to how we invest. And secondly, when we actually buy shares on behalf of our clients in companies, they become owners. And therefore we have ownership responsibilities. And that means we hold management teams to account to make sure that the behaviors that they exhibit continue to be in line with our original investment thesis. We look at the bigger picture. We understand that it's not just about the individual companies, but the individual companies succeed in a broader marketplace. And if there are market failures, such as externalities, climate change being an obvious example, then that's a problem. And that's a problem for our companies, and ultimately it's a problem for our clients.
Innovation on its own is super important, obviously, and we want to find companies that can innovate. But again, thinking about it more holistically, you need to make sure they can innovate over the very long run. So then you start to look at things like labour productivity and investment in R&D and skill creation and inequality. You want to make sure that growth over the long run is inclusive. And it matters because if all those things are in your favour, if all those boxes are ticked essentially, then you have a more stable economic outlook, you have more stable growth. And that's good for everybody.
One of the key things for us is that we don't see our clients' interests just as narrowly beating a benchmark. We see our clients' interests much more holistically. They're multifaceted. So there's no good in us beating a benchmark if the companies in that benchmark are acting in a way that destroys the planet. We need to understand all of these interlinkages. This is not a fad. This is a very, very long-standing challenge.